Welcome back, everybody, to the Weird and Strong podcast. I'm Jeremy Grinsteiner, your weird host. This week, I'm excited for you all to get to know our guest even further. I got to meet him in person this month, and it was a fantastic experience getting to know him and his wife on a much more personal level. So I'm excited for you guys to meet Bill Matthews, Cornerman Coaching, and hear about his path forward of how he's become the man that he's become and what that path has looked like. So let's get into it and let's get weird. All right. Welcoming Bill Matthews to the Weird and Strong podcast. How's it going, Bill?
I'm good, Jeremy, man. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to have a conversation with you. Looking forward
absolutely. to it. It's been a minute since we've talked. So it's good to get caught up, good to see you in the past, because it's been a couple of months since I've seen you on the Zoom. And it's great to connect.
For sure. As
we start every podcast here, starting you with a weird question. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So when you think about your peripheral vision, so the vision outside of what you normally see, what shape is it?
Wow. The first things that comes to my mind is there's really no shape. It's my peripheral vision is just endless.
Okay.
You know, I can't, it's like just opening my mind that just because I can't see any further doesn't mean that there's nothing there. If that makes any sense. Yeah. But I don't see a specific shape. I just see endless opportunity.
So yeah, you don't see it like a boundary of like, this is the hard line of what I don't see.
Yeah, that's where I used to live. There's boundaries.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that is, I'm assuming then that means that that's something that you carry into your life as well, of that as like a guiding principle.
I would say the latest version of me, yes, is that person. Prior versions of myself, if I didn't see it, feel it, taste it, understand it, then it's not real. It's impossible. And there's a saying that says, nothing leaves a man in everlasting ignorance more than contempt prior to investigation. And I was so against what would be considered woo-woo in today's world. And now I'm open. I am so open.
That's so cool. And that's been on a similar journey myself. And with that sounds like something weird. So let's talk about what makes Bill weird. What makes you unconventional? How are the ways that you show up now in the world that could be considered weird?
Believing that we're all connected, that we're really all one, and to think of us as separate entities. Yeah, we have separate souls or consciousness, but we're really one collection of people. And when I speak of, I remember when I was a kid, I was afraid to die. I don't know if every kid has this point in their time when they think of like, you mean this, my current reality is just going to end one day? And I just was devastated with the gloom and doom of this ending. And then somewhere in my life, I was taught like, whoa, your energy, atoms, neutrons, the whole thing, right? Your heart, it's proven, right? And then that scientific fact that energy can never be destroyed.
The law of conservation of matter.
Only transformed. And a light bulb went on in my head. I'm going to freaking live forever.
You already have.
Yeah. So, awesome. Right. So we're literally breathing in, which could be weird. So yeah, we're breathing in the air of our ancestors, right? They're still here.
Yeah. Or to borrow from Carl Sagan, we are made of literal star stuff. The things that make us up were forged in the heart of ginormous stars millions and billions of years ago.
It is really wild, especially as we look back at enlifted ancestors. It's like think of all of the decisions and things that had to literally happen for my existence here, right?
Yeah. So
So
for those of the listeners who are unfamiliar, because we were part of the same Enlifted Ancestors course, you want to talk a little bit about that? Describe that. Like, what was your experience with that in that realization of how much has come before you?
to never have really, I went into that program or course because I saw a picture and it said, a boy said to his father, man, alls I needed, it's pretty emotional actually. And what attracted me to it is like the little boy looks up at his father and says, all I wanted was a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And the father says, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Man, that hit me to like my core because of this dynamic I had with my father.
Mm.
I say I waited 40 years for my father to ask me to go fishing, and he never asked me.
Mm-hmm.
Now looking back, it's like, wow, dude, you could have asked him.
Yeah.
But to think like my father, I'll be 57 years old here in a couple months. So my father was born in 1928. So as I'm doing this research on my ancestors, to think of that time
Almost 100 years ago.
and to think of when was his father born? Was it 1905, 1900? I don't know what year. I don't have that offhand, but to think of how tough times had to be
Mm-hmm.
and what must have been handed down to my father, it was really eye-opening. That how often I expected my father to respond and react to situations like I would,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting that expectation on him.
Yeah.
But to think of, then just that prayer, the crimes, the murders, like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
that who knows what happened in the past that people had to heal. But the other thing is that was that trauma handed down to my great grandfather and then my father, and it is those conditions get to be handed down, and then it's like, okay, knowing and coming to this realization that I am now responsible for what I have 5 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
I'm their ancestry.
Yeah.
They're going to write about me. Who was this guy, Bill Matthews? Like, whoa, great responsibility. Now I get to teach them about what is mindset. What is the story you're telling yourself? Do you understand that you can rewrite that? Hey, let's pause. Let's take some breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Let's understand that this is, you can do that anytime. It's really, and I've begun to do that with my grandchildren, and it's really, really awesome.
Not everybody has a grandfather or grandpa that has that awareness in those tool sets. I mean, there will be many of them in the future, but you are leading the pack in that, and that is so cool that you're doing that and bringing that forward. What could you imagine is the impact of that going forward in your lineage?
That now they get to teach that to their children, and it's just going to evolve more and more, right? The other thing I want to bring up that was so important in Lifted Ancestors is that I labeled my father a certain way my whole life, that hey, I know my dad loved me because he let me live in the house. Ha ha ha. And I'd laugh. And he was violent, and he smacked my mother and all. So I had labeled him this individual. But when I was asked during that course to list 5 positive things that my father did, and I began to write them, wow, my dad really taught me he was very stoic, hardworking, able to handle situations that other men might have crumbled. He forged his birth certificate and went into World War II at 17 years old. There's a lot of positive things. And when it basically rewrote my history.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can rewrite the story of my history, it freaking changes my present time.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great unlock for the people that we work with.
Yeah.
Write the story. Is it true? Whoa, it wasn't true. So you've been living 56 years on this planet of a story that was in your head that was not true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great tool. And it was a great realization that now I don't speak of my father as this negative human being. I speak of him as he had his character flaws, but he's a very stoic individual. And he passed it on to me because I, in turn, have been able to handle some pretty tragic stuff in my life. Yeah. And carry myself in such a manner that people are like, wow, man, you're really strong.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool that to hear your path through that and that realization, because, all of us have that collection of our experiences, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise, or whether we view it as good, bad, or otherwise. Just like interacting with another person, just like you described, you'd only focused on the negative components of your relationship with your father or his characteristics. Seeing the other side of the coin allows you to see him more fully.
And also embrace the tools that he gave me. And I'm thankful. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of great stuff that he taught me, and I'm thankful for it, versus it was all this victim, poor Bill, as we say, the victim mentality. It's like, wow, no, I was the benefactor of some great tools that he was taught.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Coming back to you, like that's one area of what makes you somebody unconventional and weird. Weave us the tale of, has it always, have you always been drawn towards things like this? You mentioned a little bit of having some reservations towards the spiritual or woo-y types of modalities. Tell us that path of how did you get to where you are today?
So I would say I always believed in like a God of something's controlling this. Mm-hmm. Place, but when we were kids, there was some Mormons that my parents bought a house from, and they noticed, like, yo, this family needs a little bit of help. Mormons are really good at helping. Mm-hmm. So they helped, and went to church, all that stuff. And then I was just brought up in this very strict, like, you do this, and this is just this very to me, some negative, consequences of being human. And I walked away as soon as I could, right? So still believed that there was something controlling everything, but never really understood how or why. But I always had a sense of being connected to some greater cause. And then I got in a lot of trouble with drugs and alcohol growing up. So I've been sober for 35 years.
Very cool. Congratulations.
So, yeah. And through a 12-step program, finding a power greater than yourself, whatever you want that to be. So I've always embraced that connection. But the path to where I am now is through my wife. So she's always been she became like a Reiki master. And I'm like, yeah, you just go ahead and keep healing people with your energy. Just letting her do her thing, Mm-hmm. She's smudging and she's doing these things, and I'm like, whatever makes her happy. And then she went to Sedona a couple years back. It might even be like 5 years back, and she went to the Vortexes. Mm-hmm. She came back and explained this great experience, and said she wanted to go to school to get a degree in metaphysics. I didn't know what that was. I still don't really know everything about it, but I know that she wanted to do it. And I said, do what you got to do. Or next thing I know, she's out in the backyard meditating and blah, blah, blah. And somehow I began to pay attention to what was happening to her. She just seemed so enlightened, right? Mm-hmm. And much more free-spirited. And that was very attractive. So she taught me about meditation. I didn't know anything about meditation other than you're sitting on a mountaintop cross-legged, which is very uncomfortable, and saying,
yeah,
which is the typical misunderstanding of meditation.
The caricature cartoon version of it.
Correct. But then when I went on some Insight Timer or something, Headspace, something like that, and just began to take the little, you don't know nothing about meditation, start here, and understanding that it's about paying attention to your thoughts and seeing if you can slow those down a little bit and understand that you are not your thoughts. You're the one watching your thoughts, which is a pretty amazing concept.
Yeah. When you were in that space and exploring it, was it something that felt really intuitive for you, or was it a bit of a struggle even with that guidance for you?
Well, I always knew that I had that voice in my head. But I always thought it was me,
Yeah.
not some subconscious, cool, just my ego, my survival mechanism, right? It's funny because I remember a movie with John Belushi, and I never can remember this guy's in a bedroom with this woman, and one voice is saying, "Do her," the other one's like, "Don't, toga, toga." It's an old movie.
It's Animal House.
There you go. There you go.
I was like, oh, know that one right away. That's the,
and I
prototype.
remembered that. It's like, whoa, those are the two voices in my head. So that began a pretty neat journey of awareness. That just because I'm thinking it, I can stop and say, where did that freaking come from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Very much so. Have you ever delved into like fleshing out those other, like, I know you being an enlifted coach as well, you've done your Billy story, so you've identified that version of yourself. Have you ever explored other areas of that spectrum, like your scarcity self, your abundant self, your survival self? Ever looked into anything like that, or
never separated them as individual entities? Just always felt like that's a part of my Billy is all of those things, but I've never just wrote or just looked at one part of it. But that's in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like for many of us, it is. I only bring it up. Another coach in the community, also one of the early guests on the podcast, Scarlett Stanhope, the Biz Hippie. This was a practice that she introduced me to, and we worked on together. And it's been so cool to be able to step through that in the same way. So for folks, many of the folks who listen are familiar with the Enlifted method and Enlifted as a whole. But if you aren't familiar, the Billy story, Bill, do you want to describe what that Billy story is, or like why do we do this exercise?
Yeah, it's first of all, I was always disappointed they call it the Billy story, for gosh sakes. Why has it got to be Billy?
On you, yeah.
But it's a description of taking that voice in your head and literally writing it down. You know, Billy tells me this. As a result, Billy has gotten me to do this, and give 2 or 3 examples. And then if I keep listening to Billy, this is what my life is going to look like. And putting it down on the first part of the exercise is so eye-opening. As you put that down on paper, it becomes almost silly to begin with when you look like, wow, I've been listening to that. And you automatically come up with, or I did, so many untruths about what I wrote. I couldn't even believe what I wrote because it's not really me. But yet I can look back at times where I believe that voice that stopped me from applying for that job. You know, you're not smart enough. Don't speak up. You ain't got, you know, who do you have to what right do you have to say anything? You can't talk well anyway. And then, you know, lack of education. Why would any woman, all these little, well, not little, they ruled my life for most of my life. And then putting them all down as one story, and then even adding and rewriting it a couple times. And then obviously reading it to another person, and then adding in the slowing it down so you can get the feels right,
Mm-hmm.
and then adding in the breath and really separating yourself from the story. Because obviously, a story with a book smashed against your face is just a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
When you can pull that book away and get some space and clarity and add in some breath, things start to look different. And then as I work with clients, if I basically a 4-step the Billy story, right? You write it, you read it again slower. We're going to add in the breath and see what happens. And magic always happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I get the feeling they're up for it, I'll have them read it and put some up talk like, Billy got me to not apply for a job, really? And it just breaks it up and it becomes funny. And everybody that does it, in a couple of days, how's Billy, or how's the Punisher, how's Mikey doing, whatever they name it, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty creative. It changes their life. You cannot, once you see that voice in your head, you cannot unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed you forever.
Yeah. I've likely talked about this on the podcast a few times. We referenced it around here of seeing in color for the first time. Once you start seeing colors, it's hard to not see them. It's hard to go back to a black and white world and not imagine what the colors would be like. Yeah. In that process of going through this for yourself, what has been the impact of exploring this system, exploring your Billy story?
To realize that I have endless potential by applying these tools and not allowing the negativity to come in. Like, hey, what if the good shit happens?
Mm-hmm.
What if I just keep going? Just keep moving forward. Don't let that I'm not letting that voice stop me. I've had it stop me in the past from, like I said, not applying myself to a position, or now in my coaching business. It's like, no, I'm a kick-ass coach. Let me show you. And the result, and believing it, and really enjoying the fact of future casting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's cause and effect, or you can cause an effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? By my actions. Like, I'm going to create my future, because here's the future. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to get to it. I'm thinking from it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that you've lived both ways. Like, you've lived both of those paths from the past to what you're doing currently. What's been the major difference in making that shift towards, causing the effect versus waiting for the effect to come, or waiting for that causality to be pushed upon you?
Because if I see myself in my current position and then see myself of what I want to be, the first thing I see is all kinds of trouble, all kinds of roadblocks, all kinds of difficulty. But if I see myself already, so a great thing to do with anybody, a client or whatever, like, let's say somebody comes to me and says, I want to lose 50 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, great. Why don't you write me a paragraph of what it feels like to have already achieved that goal? What do you look like? What are you wearing? What are people saying? Where you live? How are you moving? What differences are in your life? And they get excited. They're writing it down. And then I'm like, okay, now what are 3 things that person does every day?
Mm-hmm.
And do those every day. Now you're pulling yourself towards that person. And if you've already see yourself as that person, you begin to take the actions of that person. If I see myself being a very successful coach, what does a very successful coach do every morning? Mm-hmm. He takes care of himself mentally, spiritually, physically, and then he jumps on, and here's some work he does every day.
Yeah.
Now I'm drawing myself towards that future goal.
Yeah.
versus, oh my God, how am I going to get there? This is, they say, Victor, if you're, have your why be so big you can withstand any how, right?
Mm, that's really cool. I don't know if I've heard that one before.
I believe it's in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I
Okay.
could be wrong though, but it's not an original thought.
Yeah. It's still a very poignant one to share in this
For sure.
path. So looking at all of the things that we've talked about of your path, have you always been a coach? Or is that something that you've come to later in life? Or what's that path been like for you?
It's really interesting because what I vision a coach and a teacher has changed. But when I
Mm,
look back on my childhood, like in ninth grade, I won like most easiest to get along with,
cool.
which means I've always had a listening ear and I've always been friendly to people. So
Mhm.
is that coaching just listening? Yeah.
It's definitely a part of it.
And then when I got into recovery, a part of the recovery tool is to help others. Now that I've received this message and have recovered, my goal and my purpose is to help others.
Mm,
And so in 35 years, I've been coaching a lot of people that have come to me for recovery and alcoholism. And then you start talking about a lot of other stuff, whether it's
mhm.
relationships. So I've been free coaching
Yeah.
for a long time. Now, as a business and stepping outside of the recovery world has been new to me. The last 3 years, I've been doing that.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, that's I'm sure you did other things with when you were volunteering your time to help coach others in their healing journeys, but that's a hell of a resume as experience goes. That's a phenomenal amount of experience to have going forward in a practice like this. And so applaud you for doing that for so long already.
Yeah, it's interesting because I never put it all together until I started really becoming more of a holistic coach and lifestyle coaching. And it's a fine line. What I've been coaching for free, I can't go to a 12-step program and start charging people
Mm-hmm.
for offering my recovery.
Yeah.
However, what's really fun is this group of men that I've been walking through recovery, some of them for over 10 years. I'm adding in lifted tools. It's like, hey, I got some pretty cool stuff here. Are you willing to? And I'm doing a little Billy story. It's like, hey, now it's like, sober what? Sober now what? It's
Mm-hmm.
like just getting rid of drugs and alcohol. That's baseline. Hey, now you just are at the starting line.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you want to do? Now, what do
Yeah.
you want to become? What are you working on? What are you moving towards?
And I think I would venture to say also that like that's common for many people and not just, the we look at that and we've talked about this in other areas of like somebody who does come to you and like I want to lose 50 pounds. Well, you lost it. Now what? What does life look like after this? What's the next milepost or milestone that you get to? What do you want to do next beyond that?
What's really neat is I have a couple current examples where that's what these people came to me about.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have clients that I put together. Here's your physical training program. I have an app that I use. We communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Your program's coming to an end. I design a new one. I got a couple habits. They
Mm-hmm.
pay me their money. There's very low contact.
Mm-hmm.
I like providing the service. I don't get as much value out of it my own self. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I want to offer so much more, but some people don't. That's not what they're looking for.
They're not at that point of their journey yet.
But when somebody comes to me and says, I want to lose 50 pounds, it's like, hey, me giving you a nutrition target and a workout isn't going to have you lose 50 pounds
Mm-hmm.
because you already know that you already know what you're supposed to be doing. Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about some other things. Hey, are you interested in doing some mindset coaching? And then I tell them, do you know what mindset is? Most people have never really heard a great description of mindset. And as you know how we break it down, it's the story you're telling yourself about yourself every day.
Yeah.
What is that story? Are you willing to write that down? And without giving people nutrition targets and training, they're losing weight. Because when you begin to feel good about who you are, you start making different choices automatically.
Yeah. I've heard this discussed in other areas and other ways of, this is very much looking from an outside, or like we have this perspective, especially physical training, or even I'm assuming also in some recovery components as well of like sobriety is going to fix me, or losing the 50 pounds is going to fix me. It's going to do all the things that I wanted to. I'm going to be a whole person after this. And we do it from the external stimulus. And what we're talking about is very much going from the inside out. That we change the inside, and the outside just happens to change as well.
I will definitely come back to this inside out because I'm currently reading Jamie Smart, Clarity.
Okay.
It's the inside out, but alcohol and food is not the problem. It is my solution. Drugs and alcohol were what I took to make me feel better. It never solved anything. Why did I feel I needed that? It's because of the story I was telling myself about myself.
Yeah.
It helped me quiet that down. So now I could dance and have fun with my buddies. Right. And food, the same for people who have that. It calms that, it feeds that internal, restless, irritable, discontent. Oh, I feel better now.
Yeah. And that numbing of that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
What was it like the first time that you got, I'm just, making some assumptions here of looking inward, working inward, that there have been uncomfortable moments for you. What was it like in those first moments of starting that inward journey for you?
Well, when you talk about sobriety, and getting into the trouble that I got into and being sent to rehab, not because I'm an alcoholic, but because I don't want to spend all my time in jail, not understanding what the universe had in store for me was going to expose me to, like, what you thought was an alcoholic is not what an alcoholic is. There's a complete misunderstanding of alcoholism. An alcoholic to me was a guy living on the street wearing a trench coat. He had a bottle of vodka in his jacket. He had puke on his jacket, and he couldn't keep his shit together.
Yeah.
Not a 21-year-old kid. I'm freaking partying, man. We're just having a good time.
I'm just a kid.
And if I told you what I thought was a good time, and most people was like, you did what? To who? How did you even survive that? But to actually be faced with the dilemma at the time that, hey, you have an illness, man, disease, whatever, an illness that when you're not drinking, all you're doing is thinking about drinking. When you start drinking, you don't know when you're going to stop, and you're going to wake up, time travel, blackout, whatever it is. The biggest shift in what happened is literally that taking a look from the inside out. Because I lived, and most alcoholics live, in the victim mentality. It's mom and dad's fault. You look how you raised me, where I'm at. You never took care of me. I never got the needs I met. It's all of the outside. And one of the biggest parts and realization in 12-step work is that, who are you resentful at? Why are you resentful at them? And then how did it make you feel, right? And then there's the fourth part, putting out of the mind's of what those people did to you, what part did you play?
Yeah. Taking that ownership of your own part in it.
Exactly. So now my mind was I wasn't just standing there minding my own business. I was selfish, self-centered, egotistical. I was mean and nasty and manipulative
Mm-hmm.
because I did all those things to get what I needed to soothe that ache
Mm-hmm.
of not being comfortable with who I am.
Yeah.
And now I just completely shifted my story that I owe a lot of people an apology.
Mm-hmm.
People that I literally thought harmed me, they were just retaliating because I was a pig.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest shift. And then to help others, because see, as we know, even through the Enlifted, which I shared on another podcast, it's interesting because that's the fourth step in alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
In 12 step is to write an inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the fourth step. And then in Enlifted, we do 4-step work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really kind of neat that those two collided, because we can take this further. Everybody that, so often the people we work in coaching are the victims. Maybe they're the victim of the injury. Oh my God, my shoulder, I'm injured. No, you're just suffering some injury. Hey, let's work on some mobility. Just flip that victim to some empowerment, right?
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with another coach that I do some peer coaching with, and we were talking a lot about this idea, and like even something as simple as I have ADHD being a reinforcement of victimhood in many ways. So we misunderstand that use of the verb is. So we translate that down of like I am ADHD. Like I am all of these symptoms that I experience. I am all of these things. And what I've seen other people experience in that is you get a diagnosis on some of these, whatever disease, pick something. And yes, pathologies exist and not denying that fact. And also what seems to happen is when we have a name for it, they feel comfortable and they feel understood. And then all of a sudden the symptoms start to exacerbate themselves because we start focusing on, well, this is the thing that happens to me because I have this disorder or this disease. And so then it's almost okay to have it. And I identify with it as being who I am. I created my identity around it. And when we can decouple those things as well, take that away. This is something that I experience versus something that means anything about me. And that shifts things in a big way.
Yeah, you are what you believe yourself to be. So if I say I have anxiety, well, okay, now everywhere your reticular activity, you start seeing that everywhere. You start feeling it even more. And like I said, I work really hard on trying to remove these. Like, no, you're suffering from some anxiety. You are not that thing. What is causing this anxiety? Why is it? What are you doing to elicit this response?
Yeah.
Right. I have my sister call me. She was getting ready to go in for some surgery, and she's like, I need you, Billy, I need you to like basically work your magic. I work with her a lot on stuff, and I need you to talk me off the ledge. And she's like, I'm going in for surgery. What if I don't wake up? And I decided to crack a joke and said, well, if you don't wake up, you're not going to know. You're not going to know you didn't wake up. That was not the answer she was looking for, but I was like, hey, first and foremost, let's stop. We're going to do some breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had her take 30 Wim Hof breaths and then hold as long as she could. And then when she wanted to take a breath, instead of letting it all out, take a deep breath in, hold it longer. We did 2 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I just paused and I just allowed that space afterwards. And I said, how do you feel? She's like, I don't know what you just did and what that was all about, but I feel amazing. I feel so much better. Thank you. I said, I didn't do anything. You did it. this is a gift you can give yourself anytime you feel that anxiety or darkness, fear, anxiety, whatever it is, stress. Give yourself the gift of breath.
Yeah.
And anxiety will, right?
Mm-hmm. They'll take it down many notches.
For sure.
Yeah. It's such a simple practice. And you alluded to this earlier of your path of learning meditation, of how little we understand, or how little we in the West, Americans and people who are from Western cultures, understand that that need to slow down. Like we have this go-getter attitude of go, go, go all the time, achieve more, 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 more. And just a simple act of slowing down for 5 minutes and taking a breath can completely and drastically change your outlook for the rest of the day, the hour, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I teach it to clients all the time. I'm like, hey, you're getting ready to go speak, public speaking, present. I just take 6 deep breaths before you go out there. I promise you, whether it's true or not, if you believe it to be true, it worked.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes back like, oh my God, that was amazing. I'm going to do that every time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're getting ready to take a tough phone call. It's like, hey, and Jeremy, I do this to people. You want to talk about being weird, right? So somebody calls me on the phone. They want to schedule an appointment. I could just feel it building up in them. Like, oh my God, my computer's not working. I don't know why this is. And I'm like, hey, Sally, will you do something with me? She's like, what? I'm like, this might seem weird, but will you take like 3 deep breaths with me? And I do the same thing, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then pause for a minute. How do you feel? Man, I feel a lot better. I'm like, this is available to you. I will offer that anytime for free.
Yeah.
And it also makes me aware, right? How am I breathing? And my wife brings it in. My wife brings it into her mental health coaching. She literally is a mental health professional that has high profile clients coming to her that are always in a tragic need of something and tragedies happening. And she will literally say, made up name, hey, Joe, you smell that? And they're like, what? Yeah, you smell that? And she's like, hey, I got you breathing.
Yeah.
And boom, just the thought of what she just did unlocks where they were at. And she's like, hey, Joe, you were so caught up in your story that you were telling yourself right now about everything's horrible. You weren't breathing. Let's breathe. Before I help you, can we take some breaths?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like the magic worker in the office because she does this. It's like she's an enlifted coach as well. Yeah. So. But to bring that to the mental health world, no, you don't need a pill. I mean, some people do, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But can we take some breaths first, man?
Can we start there?
Yeah.
Start there first.
Exactly. It's like, let's get down to base level, human existence. We got to breathe. You can go a while without drinking water, a long time without food. You ain't going very long without breathing. I think the longest I went on Wim Hof was like 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing to begin with, but you have to breathe.
Yeah.
You have to.
Without it, life stops. Everything stops. It almost feels magical of what we can do with our breath. Like I've had some wild experiences with like holotropic breath work and like different modalities of it. I don't know if you've explored any of those for yourself, but like
just the enlifted breathing.
Sure.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah.
The first time I'd done some box breathing. I'd never done like
big ins, big outs,
and the music and the whole thing. It's just this whole vibe. But I've done some recently, some Joe Dispenza. He talks about the perineum and bringing it up in your spinal fluid. That's an interesting maneuver. You know what I mean? And it changes your perspective. Just breathing. I'd love to share a story my wife and I went to Costa Rica
Mm-hmm.
last year. Let's call it a meditation retreat.
Sure.
I'm laying in the Maloca with 12 other people. It's pitch dark. I have these Icaros. This guy's literally doing this stuff live, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm having this experience. When you're in the dark for that long, your mind just starts to go places. And it was pretty dark what was happening, as these visions I was seeing of my mom and my dad, and I watched my mom and dad both take their last breath,
Mm-hmm.
right? Literally.
Yeah.
And I can see in my mind's eye in this darkness, my mom and dad being squeezed by this vine, like till they're not breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I'm seeing this. It just was tragic. And then, but all of a sudden, Jeremy, it hit me. It's like, hey, Bill, when's the last time you took a breath? I like caught myself like, I don't think I'm breathing.
You're choking yourself out.
I'm like just not breathing. And I didn't feel like I was gasping or anything, but I just all of a sudden verbally, everybody in there heard me go. And without opening my eyes, like you alluded to earlier, I freaking started seeing color, like boom, like the lights just came on. And I had this overwhelming realization, the key to darkness, anxiety, fear, stress, when that pressure, that darkness comes on, stop, take some breaths, and it just begins to go away. I'm not saying it eliminates everything, but it'll put you, if you ain't breathing right, you ain't thinking right. If you ain't thinking right, you're making some bad decisions.
Yeah. 100%.
So it was an unbelievable realization that I carried away from that experience going, I am teaching that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it might seem weird, but man, breathing. What's the first thing that we do when we come into this world?
Taking that breath. Yeah,
What's the last thing we do?
exactly. Mm-hmm. That's a great observation.
And who we are right now. This is what life is, what you do between those two breaths.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, because that's a component that you talked about being afraid to die when you were a kid. Of like I've experienced this for myself, and would venture that many people have been here as well. Of that fear of taking that last breath, of the fear of running out of breath. And what does that mean? That means my journey's come to an end. One of the things that's been coming up for me around that as well is like this idea of having some arbitrary need to have succeeded or make it or whatever the story is. Many of us have that in one way, shape, or form. And I was always told that it gets easier as you get older because you start to realize that those are stories, whether you have those words or not. But like in a lot of ways, I found many times that fear of that last breath almost made me feel like I was rushing towards it versus enjoying the ride towards it. I don't know if there's anything similar in your journey as well of senses or feelings between those 2 points.
The thing that just was coming to my mind is the fact that believing that we are this energetic being and that we are going to be connected to it forever is a freedom. The scary thing is leaving this planet and not making the impact that the universe had designed for me because I believe the story that I don't deserve to speak up and have my place. That is freaking what this work has done for me, and I am teaching others. Allow yourself to be who you are. The biggest regret of leaving this planet is saying, man, I had so much to give, and I let fear and other people and the story I was telling myself stop me from impacting the people I wanted to. Look at you, like weird and strong, like you are embracing you, Samson, the water shaman, like self-proclaimed, like, dude, stand up, be uniquely you. You have a voice. And is it for everybody? No. But is it for a lot? And some? Yeah, for the people. You are able to coach people that I cannot coach. because the message has to come from you.
Yeah.
And
It
the
comes from
people
our
that
experiences.
and the people that I can coach, I uniquely am designed to coach them because they need to hear it from me based on age, demographic, whatever, all these things, connection, energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest regret is for me to be coming up to that last breath and knowing that I let little Billy frickin' win.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard this came up, and forgive me if I already had brought this up, but a notion that if you're familiar with Duncan Trussell, the comedian, he was talking about this is an old
So much more than a comedian, but yes.
yes, very much so. This is an old clip that just came up for me earlier in the week that I was like, oh man, that was the slap to the face that I needed in the moment, especially it's like you say you're 50 some years old. No, you're 13.8 billion years old, and that you've been existing this entire time, and that this experience that you have is just you being a dolphin jumping out of the water, doing a couple of flips, and you'll be back into that eternity to live the next time that you jump out of the water and do a couple of flips and a couple of chirps and experience it again. And so it's also the beyond the expectation of sharing all of that and getting to a certain point. It's taking the journey that you have laid out before you and really embodying it and really living it like you have been. Like that's the important thing, because you're taking all the lessons that you've learned and applying them forward and still learning new lessons along the way.
Yeah, the tragic thing is being given the miracle that is birth and this existence and this body, as we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. Mm-hmm. Tragic thing is how many people and how long did I waste this opportunity versus living to my fullest, right? Mm-hmm. And not allowing myself to be happy. And there's a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest regrets of the dying is I wish I would have allowed myself to be happier. Like, wait a minute, what? You mean it wasn't somebody else not letting me be happy? I wish I allowed, which we have this, we get that decision. You're happy when you choose to be happy. And you were talking about this outside in, how many people say, I will be happy when I achieve that money, get that business, get that girl, get that house. And then you see a billionaire take his own life because that didn't solve the problem.
Or completely self-destruct because it didn't actually matter.
Right. No, it's inside out. When things aren't going my way, it has nothing to do with these things. It has everything to do with my contaminated thinking about those things, my expectations. They should have. It's supposed to be this way. No, I need to just look at what are my expectations, my thinking. It all relates to my thinking.
Yeah. It's been an eye-opening experience for myself and obviously for you as well, of changing these thought processes, changing how we observe it, and changing how we feel about it as we're coming close to the time box we set. Any last things that you want to share with the audience? Anything that you're bringing forward in the world that you'd like to make them aware of?
I mean, what we just talked about is so much of the things that I want to make people aware of, that they are not their thoughts. They're the one watching your thoughts. Mm-hmm. As Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul would say, the roommate is living in your head. And that you have the power to just change. If little changes, choices make huge changes in your life. You don't have to say, I need to change my whole life. As I give this description of a big cruise liner, if you just go up there and click that little wheel, one click over 500 miles, man, you're headed to a whole another direction. Starting with morning meditation changed how I view myself. And then I start reading and I start writing, and I'm just stacking these little things, and it changed my life dramatically. Mm-hmm. So give yourself to free. If you keep waking up at the same time, on the same side of the bed, going to the same coffee pot, same time of shower, get in the same car, take the same drive to work, go to the same job, Every day, you are just repeating your past every day. You're not even living in the present. You're recreating your past by doing. So I'm just going to beg of anybody listening, make a small change. Get up at a different time. Read a book. Take a different way to work. Cause a shift in what's currently happening, and magic happens. And a big concept that I'm just thinking of lately is just say yes. Your first instinct is say no, can't make it to dinner. No, I don't want to speak. No, I don't want to go on that podcast. No, just say yes. Everything magical in my life has happened on the other side of me just saying, yeah. Stop being safe. Stop playing it safe. Put yourself on the hook for shit. Yeah. Me reaching out to you, I put myself on the hook. Hey, let's get together. Cool. I'm on the hook. Yeah. Magic happens when you put yourself on the hook.
Yeah. That's such a great way to round out our conversation. Thank you so much. If people are interested in learning more about what you do, if they're interested in hearing more, if they're interested in getting some assistance from you, where can they find you?
I have a couple Instagram. One is Spiritual Bill. It's on my Instagram. It's SPRTULBIL. And then another one is my incognito. It's _perspectivist, which is not even a real word. I made it up, but _perspectivist. And I just post daily quotes. I use the internet to encourage, inspire, and serve others with love. That's all I want to do. So you could find me there, DM me. I'd love to be of service to anybody looking to get unstuck, to uncover, discover, and discard these stories that you've been telling yourself, and help you live the best life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill, for being on this episode. It's been a fantastic time talking to you again after all these months, and hearing your stories, hearing your experiences, and sharing that with the world. I appreciate it so much.
Appreciate you. Thanks for the opportunity, man. Have a great day.
Yeah. And to everybody else listening, thank you for listening. Until next time, stay weird, stay strong.